In view of the title of my talk, Magical Rituals from Ancient Mesopotamia, you well expect me to begin tonight's lecture with the discussion of the term magic and all the problems it might involve, and whether and how or whether at all it applies to the texts and rituals that I will be discussing with you tonight. But even though the theoretical studies on the term magic, the theory of ritual, is a very fruitful field of research, and much ink was spilled on these problems, I would like to approach my topic tonight differently and start with the ultimate object of our research, really, namely the people of ancient Mesopotamia. They were, I think, very much like us. They hoped to prosper and make sense of the world, despite the challenges that they and we today still encounter during a lifetime. Of course, they were in many ways also different from us, especially in their relationship to their environment. They were very much less in control of their environment, and human existence was in a way precarious that we find hard to imagine. The peril of being human, and ultimately human mortality, of course, was the peril. This peril was much greater for them, whereas the promise of being human, namely to be able to make an intelligent interpretation of the world and of our lives, was much more challenging. And what I will be talking tonight about are really strategies for coping with these challenges, strategies provided by experts in ancient Babylonia and Syria in the form of rituals. And some of the things I will present to you will remind you of religion. Others you will associate automatically with what you imagine magic to be, and yet other things will remind you more of medicine or scholarship and early science. And that's not a problem. You will always be entirely justified in your associations. Let us imagine this environment in which the ancient Babylonians and Assyrians lived. There was no light at night, there was no modern medicine, and they didn't have all the abilities that we have to analyze our past and predict future events. And let's imagine that we're a sick person in a drafty house, we're in pain in the middle of the night, there's no light, we're socially isolated, our illness has affected our whole family, nobody talks to them anymore, and you're lying there alone in the dark, and you hear this sound here. Thank you for your patience. Well, you hear this sound, and while you would just flick on the light and have a look out the back window whether your eccentric neighbor has now a herd of cattle in his backyard, a sick individual in Babylonia and Assyria had a different association, as texts and images show us. Bellowing or screaming sounds were associated with the presence of evil ghosts, who were in turn, interestingly, associated medically with ear noises. And an example for a text that shows us this connection is the famous underworld vision of a prince, a first millennium text, where a ghost is described as the head was that of an ox, the 4 hands and feet were human. And a clay tablet with a ritual against an evil ghost actually gives us a depiction of a ghost with a human body and a bovine head and bovine hoofs. And other texts confirm this association. For example, the omens for the magical expert when he approached a patient. If an ox glares at him, that patient is dangerously sick, one must not go near him. If an ox butts him, that patient is dangerously sick, one must not go near him. If he sees an ox's horn, that patient will die. Here again, there's this association with the ox, bulls, and death, and also in other omen texts, you find attestations like this. If a date palm in a grove roars like a bull, the house of that man will be dispersed. And similar omen apodices are associated with ghosts. And if we look at the following text, an extract from an incantation, or a demon that bellows like a bull, or a demon that bars like a sheep, or a demon that bleats like a goat, or a demon that brays like a donkey, or a demon that barks like a dog, or a demon that squeals like a pig, you can see that for Babylonians and Assyrians, the world was inhabited and animal sounds could indicate in certain situations of your life that the world was inhabited not only by humans, not only by animals, not only by the natural environment that surrounds us and the great deities that were visible in the night sky and lived in their temples in the cities, but also was populated by less powerful beings that were less powerful than the great gods, but also apparently nearer to humans, evil demons on the one hand, but also benevolent spirits. And the former, the evil demons, were attacking humans potentially, and the latter, the benevolent spirits, were forces that you would want to mobilize for your own protection, to fight and defend you against evil demons. And experts for protecting humans from these evil demons and healing the illnesses and misfortune that these demons could cause were called Asipu in ancient Babylonia, literally a conjurer, someone who speaks incantation. And the knowledge of these Asipu experts is known to us on the one hand from material culture, such as from this bronze bell that you see on the right hand, but unfortunately in Mesopotamia, no workshop of an Asipu expert has survived. All his plants and ingredients would not survive in the Mesopotamian soil. And the main source of information for us about the Asipu and his lore are many thousands of cuneiform clay tablets, especially from the first millennium, but also from the second and from the third millennium, that give us an insight into the expert knowledge of this Asipu, who's often translated as exorcist. And this text corpus comprises diagnostic texts, pharmaceutical texts, explanatory texts, but mainly instructional texts for measures, for therapeutic measures, for apotropaic rituals, and also with aggressive purpose. And these instructional texts you can then further subdivide in texts that transmit the texts that were to be recited and instructions that give information on in which context and these recitations were to be recited and how the rituals were to be performed. And next to the texts that transmit ceremonial rituals to be performed, we also have more simple prescriptions for the production of remedies and medicines. And underlying this large corpus of texts are a few basic assumptions that were shared by all experts and also their clients, which we could refer to as the first principles of Ashiputu, and many of these principles are also very familiar to us. And underlying this whole expert knowledge is the assumption that events have causes, which is very familiar to us, but that counterintuitive events, surprising events, like a sudden illness or an early death, that they had specific causes that were also counterintuitive, were unusual, but at the same time culturally plausible. And determining these causes of a specific suffering or an illness was the first and necessary step towards healing and protecting a patient against unfavorable events, and this determination of the cause we call etiology. The illness itself, the suffering itself of the patients was conceptualized as a state of being bound and of being impure. That is also a concept that is widely spread across the world, and the main etiologies that we find in the texts are evil ghosts, evil demons, human witches that performed rituals with evil intent against the patients, the transgressions of the patient themselves, who did transgressed norms, societal norms, and therefore then suffered illnesses and were vulnerable to the attack of demons and other evil agents, and of course the anger of gods. And for all these etiologies, this is only a very simple list, and it's of course much more complex, and they are intertwined often. We do have large corpora, large bodies of texts that address specific illnesses that were supposedly caused by the attack of a ghost or by specific demons. And once the Asipu had arrived at a specific diagnosis, he could pick the appropriate ritual or remedy to address the suffering of his patient. I will tonight only talk about one of these rituals, which was called by the Babylonians the House of Enclosure, or in Akkadian, Beit Meseri, and this was a ritual for the protection of a house and its owner against evil demons. It's a text that is known from many manuscripts, all of first millennium date, dating from the 7th century through to the 3rd century BC, coming especially from the royal libraries of Nineveh, but also from the famous library of Kitze Ashur in Ashur, and various Babylonian find spots, especially from Uruk. We can see from the various manuscripts that the text was organized in different fashion in Babylonia and in Assyria, and that also within the library in Nineveh there were different versions of this text, and that there were also not only different organizational patterns of the text, but also variant versions of this ritual that were much simpler than what we call the standard version of Beit Meseri, which was performed for the Neo-Assyrian kings at Nineveh. But let's put these technical details aside and have a look at what this ritual really contained. And the beginning is rather frustrating because the first 2 days are basically unknown still. You can see on the right side a sort of reconstruction of the first so-called ritual tablet of Beit Meseri. That is the tablet that described the procedures that had to be followed during the ritual, and the recitation texts are found on separate tablets. And you can see that only the very beginning, when in the morning the bed of the patient is set up in the house, is preserved, and then a lot of text is missing on the obverse, and I'm not even sure whether this tablet even had 3 columns, so that even more text is missing. But what is certain is that during these first 2 days, figurines were fabricated by the exorcists that were to be used in the ritual, and also paintings in the house of the patient were painted on various walls of the house. And then the exorcist returns to the house of the patient from outside the city, and the procedures of the 3rd day are rather well known in contrast to the first and 2nd day. The day begins with offerings to the sun god, Shamash, on the roof of the house. Then all the figurines that have been prepared are undergo a mouth-opening rite on the roof of the house. Then a so-called scapegoat ritual is performed on the roof, which involves covering the patient with the hide of a slaughtered goat and then taking off the hide from the patient, and the hide absorbs all the impurity that is on the patient. Then the exorcist and the patient leave the roof, go to what is called the bedroom of the house, where the patient's bed is set up, and then follows a long afternoon and night of recitations in front of various figurines and paintings of apotropaic protective figures in the house. Towards the night, the house is locked up and surrounded with apotropaic flower lines. The lamp is lit next to the patient's bed, and in the night, then rites are performed again on the roof for god Lugal, who's not terribly well known, but we'll talk more about him later on. Then in the early morning, all the materials are deposited in the river. The house is opened, all the figurines disappear, all the paintings are wiped off, and the ritual ends in the morning sun, and the patient receives the final delivery, healing from the sun god who rises in the east, as you also see here on this seal that is here in the museum. A particular point of interest of this ritual are the many, more than 100 figurines and paintings that are used on the third day of the ritual. And what is especially interesting is that we wouldn't be able to really perform this ritual. We don't have enough information because the text was written for experts who have much more knowledge about these rituals than we have. But we can reconstruct the arrangement of the paintings and figurines, at least in schematic fashion, based on the ritual instructions, based also on the incantation texts, and other related texts. And if one does it, then this somewhat weird drawing emerges, the figure in the middle on the brown background that is supposed to be the patient lying on his bed. To his right, the Asipu expert who is treating him. And the inner square, imagine please, to be the bedroom of the patient, and the outer square to be the outer wall of the house, and an important role in the ritual play the entrance to the bedroom and the main entrance to the house. And the little dots and triangles and squares give you the information on where paintings and figurines were set up. All the little squares and triangles next to the walls are paintings, and those inside the rooms are figurines. And the oval symbols are deities and other protective spirits. The upright squares are so-called Uringalu reed standards. These are apotropaic reed standards originally, which in the first millennium probably looked more like this palmet tree, and were painted on the sides of the patient's bedroom wall. These are these yellow squares here, and were carried by people by protective spirits who carried these Uringalu standards. Then an important role play what we call Apkallu sages. These are primeval sages that, according to Babylonian knowledge, were sages at the court of the god Enki Ea in the subterranean ocean, the god of wisdom, and also the god of Ashiputu, and brought humankind knowledge, the knowledge of Ea at the beginning of human history. And these Apkallu sages, as we'll see, play an important role, and you see them here as triangles. They're also humans. These are the circles, and animal models and paintings, especially of guard dogs, in the entrances. And we will not have the time tonight to go through all 120 plus little figurines and how they were addressed. I just want to discuss with you a few of the very characteristic figurines that are used and how they can be interpreted based on the incantations that are addressed to them in the course of the third day of this ritual. Next to the patient's bed, at his head, we might expect powerful gods that protect him, but actually what we find, according to the ritual instruction in this place, are the figurine of a man and a woman made of clay set up on mud bricks, each on a separate mud brick. And it is at first surprising why just figurines of simple humans are so close to the patient. If we look at the incantation that was recited, addressed to this clay models of a man and a woman, it becomes clearer why they are so close to the patient. We read in this Akkadian incantation, which the patient would have understood. It would have sounded archaic to him, but he would have understood, I think, the wording. I've made you, man and woman, with the clay of Ea. I've made you beautiful, you are godlike. Adjuring you by Ea, the lord of your clay, and Asaluchi, who brings justice to the oppressed, I've set you up at the head of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, to save his life. May neither an evil god nor an evil goddess approach his bed and his body. And I skip a passage. By Ea, the lord of the subterranean ocean, by the exorcist of the gods Marduk, may your mouth be open, and may the cheer of be set out. I've provided you with bread, so eat. I've provided you with water, so drink. Eat the pure water, drink the clear water. Eat together with the patient. Open your mouth together with the patient. I skip again a passage. Stand ready for your watch. Turn the enemies away. That's the final line. And we might not associate a story when we hear this incantation, but a Babylonian would immediately have associated the story of the first creation of humankind by the god Ea from clay, and by the god Ea not as one single individual, but the creation of humankind as social beings, as many. We are not alone, we are many, and also the mud bricks allude to the repetition of the act of creation by the birth, because these are the mud bricks, the birth bricks that were used in ancient Mesopotamia. And it would have reminded the Babylonian immediately that from the very start of the existence of humanity, humans have a powerful ally, namely the god Enki, Ea, who first created them together with the mother goddess, and humans can rely on this god, and he's present for them. And the second aspect, that humans were not created as insulated beings, but as social beings, is then emphasized in the middle of the incantation, where human commensality and lifting the isolation of the patient are the topic. This figurine of the man and the woman, they eat together with the patient, they join him, they provide him company, everything that other people in his situation would have refused to give him, they would have kept away from him. So here, human community is in the ritual recreated for the patient, and this community then in the end not only provides entertainment while eating together, but also protection. They are at the same time a guard, and that is why humans are so close to the patient in this ritual, not powerful gods as we might have expected. When we go further away from the bed towards the entrance of the bedroom, we come across warriors, groups of 7 warriors of various kinds, and they are also addressed in incantations, many of them only consisting of really invoking their names and thereby inviting them to the proceedings and making them present, activating them, not being just figurines and paintings anymore, but live participants of the ritual. And the 7th recitation of Beit Mesari is addressed to 2 groups, is recited twice. Once to the Sebetu, the Pleiades, a group of 7 warlike astral deities, and also to a group of 7 sages of Ea who are armed, who carry daggers and hatchets, just as the Sebetu do. And it's a very short incantation, basically has only 7 lines, the 7 names: trap for the evil mushroom demon, mighty creator of life, expeller of the evildoer, protector of the secret of Enlil, Gira, who raises the enemy, sword that overwhelms Namta, mighty one who brings delight. These are the 7 names, and this is then summarized as divine hapted, annihilator of the evil one. So they are addressed with meaningful names, and we can imagine the figurines and paintings in the fashion that we see them here in the North Palace. 3 of the Sebetu are preserved, and you see them here with raised hatchets and daggers in their hand. And just like that, they would be there for the patient, protecting the entrance and protecting his bed. Other Apkallu groups would carry more archaic weapons like wooden sticks that are burned on both sides to harden the ends, so very Neolithic weapons, it seems. But these 7 Apkallus are more modern and carry daggers. But in the room, we do not only find armed Apkallu, not only warlike Apkallu sages, but also at the foot end of the bed and on the wall, painted on the wall at the back of the room, so away from the entrance, but in the area of the patient, in the more protected area, we find other sages of Ea who are described as carpmen. These are the most famous of the Apkallus, often depicted in Mesopotamian art, and they carry buckets and an aspergillum and sprinkle pure water. And also these 7 carp Apkallus are addressed by their names, and these names were probably as well known to any Babylonian as the names of the archangels are to you, and a little story is told about them in the incantation that is addressed to these carp Apkallus of Ea. Uana, who made the design of heaven and earth perfect. Uaneduga, who was endowed with great wisdom. Enmeduga, for whom a favorable fate was decreed. Enmegalama, who was born in the house. Enmebulunga, who grew up in the meadows. An-Enlilda, the exorcist of Eridu. Uduapsu, who ascended to heaven. The shining carps, the carps of the sea, the 7 of them. The 7 sages who grew up in the river, who keep the design of heaven and earth in order. These names, the invocation here of these 7 famous sages, allude certainly to stories that were known to the Mesopotamian Asipu. It's a Sumerian incantation. The patient wouldn't have understood it, but he would have understood the names. He would have known the names of these sages. We don't know these stories in detail. Unfortunately, we are best informed really about these carp Apkallus through Berossos, who famously describes them coming up from the Persian Gulf at the beginning of human history, giving to humankind all the knowledge of Ea. So these mighty carp Apkallus, these carp sages, protected the patient and purified him and were painted on the back wall of his bedroom, 7 of them. And this is where this incantation could well have ended. The 7 carp Apkallus were addressed. But surprisingly, this incantation, which is the most famous incantation of Beit Meseri, continues with 4 more sages that are not represented in paintings on the wall. Nungal Piringal Dim, the sage of Enmerka, who had Inanna descend from heaven into the Anna temple. Piringal Nungal, who was born in Kish, who enraged Ishko in heaven, and thus caused rain and green growth to be absent from the land for 3 years. Piringal Apsu, who was born in Adab, hung his seal on a goatfish, something you shouldn't do, thereby enraging Enki in the subterranean ocean, and a fuller struck him down with the seal on his throat. 4th is Luana, 2/3 sage, who led a dragon out of the Ninkiang Nuna, the temple of Inanna built by Shulgi, the 4 sages of human descent, whom Enki, the Lord, made perfect with great wisdom. These 4 sages are not as mighty, clearly, as the first 7 carp sages. They are partly human. They are sages of human descent, and they are clearly very wise and wonderful. But the stories that are here alluded to, that are told about them, tell us that they, were very wise, but also very human, and clearly made terrible mistakes in their life. And the question really is why this incantation includes these 4 human apkallos. The patient wouldn't have understood this text, and I would argue that it is a sort of bridge for the Asipu, who derived his own expert knowledge from Ea and from the first 7 carp apkallos. And these human apkallos that followed upon the 7 carp apkallos, they form a bridge to his own existence as an Asipu. He is fully a human expert. And here we have the first partly human experts that transmitted this knowledge to, in the end, also the Asipu expert who performs this ritual. We've seen now 2 groups of 7 apkallu sages, the armed apkallu sages and these carp apkallu sages. In total, unsurprisingly, 7 groups of each 7 apkallu sages were used in this ritual. Some of them looked more like this apkallu, a bird apkallu. At the foot end of the bed, there were tamarisk figurines of kneeling apkallus that probably looked like the apkallu that you can see here in this Neo-Syrian relief, a detail from a dress, actually, on a Neo-Syrian relief. So it's very small on the relief. And all these 7 times 7 apkallus now had become alive by being invoked, by being addressed by name. But when we read the incantation text, especially the 6th recitation of Beit Meseri, we see that in addition to these paintings and figurines, there was yet another figurine that was more alive than the figurines that we've so far and paintings that we so far talked about. Here's a quote from this incantation. It describes the ritual proceedings in Beit Meseri. I've pulled a red garment over their raised arms. I've surrounded them with a colorful cord. I've placed staffs of erewood and palm fronds in each of their hands. I've made the drawing perfect. I've surrounded them with purifying rites of gypsum. I've surrounded them with the magic flower circle of Nisapa, the band of the great gods, the band of 7, the furious winged ones. I've set up a figurine of Nergal at their head. I've placed Nuska, the god of the lamp, at their head on the brazier. So this is a description of the 7 winged ones. You can imagine them like this bird apkallu here, not exactly, but it's this type of depiction that are here addressed in this incantation. And then there's a long passage describing the ritual actions, and we come towards the end of the incantation, and it continues with, I've set up 2 figurines of the watchmen of Enki and Asaluchi inside the gate. Enki, our god of Ashiputu knowledge, Asaluchi, the divine exorcist, his son, on the right and the left side, these 2 watchmen. And then the text continues. The incantation is the incantation of Asaluchi. This is a very common motif in Babylonian incantation literature, that in various formulaic expression, the incantations, the recitations contain a statement that this incantation is not an invention of the Asipu, but was first recited by the divine exorcist Asaluchi himself, and the human Asipu expert only repeats it here, only employs it in this specific ritual context. So The incantation is the incantation of Asaluchi, the divine exorcist. This is a very common formula. But the second half of a line is less common and, to my knowledge, only found in Beit Mesari. The exorcist is the image of Asaluchi. And this is a very literal statement that the human exorcist who moved among the figurines and held the patient's hand and so on is, in the perception of this mythical ritual world that comes alive during the night and the afternoon of Beit Mesari, that he is also a figurine, a live figurine of the divine exorcist Asaluchi himself, who in mythical past would have performed, of course, these rituals himself, and the Asipu expert himself now is also an image, a figurine like the figurines that surround him, but he's a live figurine of the god Asaluchi, the divine exorcist, who, of course, in the second and first millennium was associated, identified with the god Marduk, the divine king of the gods. So in the first millennium, in the performance of this ritual, the most powerful god of the pantheon would walk among humans as a live human figurine in the perception of these rituals, as is shown in this incantation text, which reflects what people thought about this ritual. Now, we saw that before this statement, two figurines of the watchmen of Enki and Asaluchi are mentioned. And this is in the extract that you have here on the slide. You think, well, that here are two figurines. But if you read the whole text of Beit Mesari, well, you get the impression that it's a ritual of twins. And this is another passage from the same incantation. And I read not all of it, but you have, I've set up two figurines of joined twins whose appearance is perfect, who repel the evil Galu demon at the head of the patient on the right and left side. I've set up a figurine of Lugal who has no rival at the bond of the house, a figurine of Meslam Ta'ea who has no rival. Lugal and Meslam Ta'ea are divine twins, as we'll see in a minute. I've set up Lulal and Latarak, another pair. I've drawn twins in the pose of fighters. I've set up bitumen twins, etc., etc. Everywhere are twins in Beit Mesari. Everywhere are pairs of protective spirits. And the question is, why is there this focus on twins? The answer is, of course, banal and very simple. Guards, if you want to guard a house, if you want to guard anything, if you want to control a process, you employ two people, not one person. A guard usually consists at least of two people who keep each other awake. So this is certainly the reason why twins are everywhere in this ritual. And you can see it even in this schematic reconstruction, that you often have the same symbol on the right and the left side. These are all these various pairs of twins, and you can also see it in the iconography of apotropaic protective spirits, like here on this bronze bell that I already showed you. You have here these two lion-headed protective spirits, and at first sight it looks like they were fighting each other, but actually they are together protecting an entrance. So twins are everywhere in Beit Mesari because this is a ritual for guarding a house. And one pair of twins plays a particular role in Beit Mesari, and this is the pair, the most important pair of twins in the Mesopotamian pantheon. It's the god Lugal and his twin brother Meslam Ta'ea. They are not very important gods, actually. They are a humble guard at the gate of the netherworld, doorkeepers, basically. And you see them here depicted on a first millennium amulet as a pair of warriors who protect an entrance. And what is interesting in Beit Mesari is that Lugal makes actually an astonishing career in this ritual. Otherwise, he's really not a terribly important god. But within Beit Mesari, as we'll see in a minute, he becomes a divine exorcist, he becomes the master of ceremonies, and he's also the lord and bailiff of the netherworld. He's also very prominently represented both as a figurine made of wood and reed and as a painting at the gate, and together with his twin brother Meslamtaea as another figurine called Mashtaba, the twins. His presence in the figurine is transient. He is in a secluded room during the day. In the evening, he's at the so-called bond of the house. What that is a difficult matter. In the night, then, this figurine is used on the roof. But in the morning it disappears again. It's dismantled, and Lugal Ira and Meslamtaea were the constellation Gemini and were nocturnal gods and were therefore especially present in the night, and that is used in the Beit Mesari ritual. Let's have a brief look at what Lugal Ira looked like in our ritual, this figurine made of wood and reed, and a description of that figurine is preserved on this text from Uruk, which looks like a table and is a table. It's a table that catalogues all the figurines that were used in the ritual of Beit Mesari, gives their number, gives information on what they look like, gives information on where they were to be set up, gives information on which recitation they were to be addressed with, and how they were to be provided with offerings. And this is the description of the figurine of Lugal Ira. A figurine of Lugal Ira made of choice wood and reed. He's attached to a new kalaku chair. He's clad in red paint as his attire. He's provided with a kilamu headdress. He's provided with cloth ubigal shoes. The face of the figurine is friendly. I'm not sure that's correct. It sounds wrong. It's probably wrong. He's daubed with red and black paint. He's provided with a flask of tamarisk wood. As hair, he's provided with linen yarn that is dyed red. He's provided with a gold-plated horn of bronze. A golden headband is attached to it. His hips are girt with daggers in a belt of dushu leather. He carries a chutpalu mace that is plated with gold in his right hand and a zachatu battle axe in his left hand. A bow and a quiver with arrows hang from his side. He stands at the bond of the house again. So a very precious figurine is used and illustrates the prominence of this god during the ritual proceedings. And why is he so prominent? How is it described in the recitations? 2 prayers addressed to Lugal Ira. This is recitation 2, mainly Akkadian incantation addressed to this god. Lugal Ira, richly adorned figure, hero who captures the evil ones. Lugal Ira, guardian against the evil ones. Lugal Ira of all the gods. Lugal Ira, exorcist of all the gods. I've assembled you, Lugal Ira, so that you eradicate the Sanchul Chazu, demon. I call you, Lugal Ira, I invite you, Lugal Ira, from the heaven of Anu. I sound the alarm for you in the middle of the night. The watches of the night are equal. They all belong to Lugal Ira. In his hands they are placed. You who send away enemy and evil one, I have assembled you, Lugal Ira, at the head of so-and-so, son of so-and-so. You who drive off the enemy, repel the evil one. So the fabrication of the figurine is actually mentioned in the incantation, and Lugal Ira is designated as the exorcist of all the gods. And this epithet, exorcist of all the gods, was a standard epithet of the god Asaluchi, the exorcist of the gods and son of Enki Ea. So here in this incantation, as you can see in this line, but one can see also in other passages of the incantation, Lugal Ira is invoked as a nocturnal Asaluchi. Asaluchi is not present during the night, and Lugal Ira takes his place as the exorcist of the night, and is therefore in this ritual identified with Asaluchi, and then, as we shall see, not only with Asaluchi, the divine exorcist, but also with Marduk, the omnipotent king of the gods, who's identified with Asaluchi. Because in the other incantation to Lugal Ira, also in Akkadian, we read, Lugal Ira, firmly founded, powerful god, furious, most savage of the gods, powerful heir, offspring of mightiest of the gods. You control the universe. You guide the universe aright. Lugal Ira never controlled the universe outside Beit Mesari. He's a very unimportant god somewhere at a gate in the netherworld. And the god who usually controls in this fashion the universe is, of course, Marduk, the king of the gods in the first millennium. So here, Lugal Ira is actually described in the role of Marduk. I, the expert, the scholar, this is now the Asipu speaking, call you, Lugal Ira, who places the word of the subterranean ocean in my heart. The word of the subterranean ocean is the knowledge of Enki Ea, the knowledge of Asiputu, and here it is Lugal Ira who brings it from the subterranean ocean because he's Asaluchi and gives it to the exorcist. Together with you, Lugal Ira, I call the great gods. Nergal, the lord of the verdict, Ishum, the vizier of the street, Almu and Alamu, the kings of the Sebetu, the eighth, their sister Narudi. Lugal Ira listened to the word of the expert, the scholar. He called all the gods, giving them their commission. And Lugal Ira is now speaking in the incantation. An offering has been strewed out for you. Fine flour has been poured out for you. O you, remove from his dwelling any evil that is present in this house. So Lugal Ira here has universal power. He's the one who commands all the gods to assemble for helping the patient, for protecting the house, and becomes the mediator between the Asipu and the divine world, basically. So Lugal Ira here is a nocturnal Asaluchi, he's a nocturnal Marduk, and there's yet another dimension to Lugal Ira here that we can see. There are these pairs of gods that are invoked together with Lugal Ira, Almu and Alamu. They are otherwise also known as other names for Lugal Ira and Meslam Ta'ea. But interestingly, also Nergal, the king of the netherworld, and Ishum, his vizier, are invoked here. And in Beit Mesari, Meslam Ta'ea, the twin brother of Lugal Ira, gets epithets that are normally the epithets of Ishum. Ishum, a fiery god who was a night watchman and the vizier of the god Era or Nergal. And here in Beit Mesari, Meslam Ta'ea is identified with Ishum, this night watchman, and like the fire in the night Ishum, also the constellation Gemini, and Meslam Ta'ea as one of the stars is a fire in the night who protects the patient. And by this equation, then secondarily, Lugal Ira is not only equated with Asaluchi and Marduk, but also at the same time, which might seem illogical to us, but didn't seem illogical to the Babylonian Asipu, was equated at the same time to the master of Ishum, namely to Era or Nergal, the king of the netherworld. So Lugal Ira here is not only the nocturnal exorcist, but at the same time not only a lowly doorkeeper of the netherworld, but himself the king of the netherworld, who guarantees that during the night, during the ritual, all these evil demons that threaten the patient, have affected him, that they are banned to the netherworld, that they are enclosed in the darkness of the netherworld and will never get out. When in the morning then the sun rises and the ritual ends, the constellation Gemini, Lugal Ira and Meslam Ta'ea disappear. The precious figurine of Lugal Ira is taken apart and disappears. All the paintings are wiped off, all the figurines are moved out, and some of them thrown in the river, or parts of them thrown in the river and deposited there. And the rising sun then brings the final delivery to the patient, who then steps out of this mythological world that was created around him during the night into his own time again, and leaves behind all the evil that has affected him in the dark night. And the guarantor that this worked was Lugal, the nocturnal exorcist, universal ruler of the world and also of the netherworld. And the patient in the morning, now healthy and happy, enjoys the light of the sun and we can but hope beams with happiness like the bright day. That is how Babylonians often put it in the rituals. That is the prediction: you will be as happy as the bright day. And this, of course, alludes to the typical end of these rituals in the morning when the sun gods brings the patient final delivery. And here in Beit Mesari, the patient steps back from the mythological world that he went through during the night into his own world in the morning, and hopefully he's healed and feels better. Thank you very much.